Right, 3:01, so we'll kick off, and Ashley Gray, who is the chair of Meet Business Women New Zealand, is behind the scenes looking after our technical today, so thank you to Ash. She'll just keep admitting participants as they come in. My name is Catherine Heffernan. I represent a couple of hats. I'm the General Manager of Communications for AMIC, which is the Australian Territory Partner for Meet Business Women, and I'm also the chair of Meet Business Women Australia Committee. I'd like to thank you all for joining today, whether you're a current MBW member, an AMIC member, a member of MIA New Zealand, or a guest. Thank you for taking the time as we go through a wonderful Meet Business Women Masterclass today for about 45 minutes with Britt Spyrou on resilience and creating your own happiness, who I will introduce shortly. I'll just take 2 minutes to go through a very quick overview of Meet Business Women for those of you that are new and not members at the moment. So the Territory Partners, as I mentioned, is AMIC, Meat Industry Association of New Zealand, Beef and Lamb New Zealand Incorporated, and Beef and Lamb New Zealand Limited. This is the first joint Australia-New Zealand event that we've put on together, and we're planning on doing quite a few more coming up. So just acknowledging the Territory Partners here. And also like to do a huge thank you and shout out to our global strategic partners of Meet Business Women Global, and also a welcome to new partner Coles, who has recently come on for Australia. If you're not a member, please visit meetbusinesswomen.org. You will be able to sign up there. An annual membership gets you access to exclusive events. There are monthly masterclasses, exclusive content to access around resources. There is a global mentoring platform that was just launched this year that aligns mentors and mentees together. If you're interested in getting involved in that, please do. And we also, the team in the UK, Laura Ryan and her amazing team over there, commission and work with research and publication of a gender representation in the meat sector report, with the new one being planned for the first quarter of 2022. So hop on and have a look more. A couple of upcoming masterclasses for October. 21 October, we've got the wonderful Michelle Redfern, who is going to talk about how to strategically network like a boss. That's at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Auckland time, as it's a global UK event. But we also have coming up, and you would have seen a save the date, and an invite is coming out either tomorrow or Friday for Tuesday the 26th of October, which is another joint initiative with our AU and NZ sisters on a mini virtual conference, and that's got Laura Ryan, who's our MBW Global Chair, Margot Andre, CEO of Australian Pork Limited, and Julia Jones from the New Zealand Exchange. And the times are there. Look out for that invite that's coming your way. I will stop sharing now and move over to introduce our speaker today, who is joining us at, I think, 7 a.m. From Greece, Britt Spyrou. Britt is going to be talking to us today on resilience, and Britt is she's actually on familiar turf online over here now, being Australian born. Britt is a lawyer and a scientist with over 20 years experience in private practice, government administration and consulting. She has lived and worked across Europe, the Middle East, Africa and Asia. Britt's current role is partnerships consultant to the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. This role sees Britt work primarily with more than 100 private sector partners engaged in helping build sustainable food systems in Africa. Britt is performing this role, having now been on leave from the Australian Government Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment. So many of you on this call will probably know Britt through your own working experiences with her. And she's over there accompanying her husband as the Australian ambassador to the Hellenic Republic, Republic of Bulgaria and Romania. So please join me in welcoming Britt, and I'll hand over to you. Thank you. Sorry, also, just my apologies. Any housekeeping towards the end, we'll do a quick Q&A. So if you have any questions as you go through, please feel free to pop them over in the chat box, and I'll moderate that as we go through for a Q&A at the end. Thank you, Britt. Apologies.
Thank you very much. My share, choose a different share, I think. Yes. Lovely to be here. It has been quite a journey coming here to be with you all today. And I really want to thank Ashley and Catherine for the kind invitation, and Daleen Ray for recommending me to come and speak with you today. So today's class is going to be covering a couple of things. The first one is some concept definitions, so you know what we're talking about with resilience and life satisfaction. Some dimensions of resilience and life satisfaction to do with organizations that you might work for, yourself as an individual, and career resilience. And also to really highlight what the evidence is saying in these spaces, and really to start your own plan to be able to think about how to do some things in this kind of space. In every instance, I'm going to try and relate that to my personal experience, because at the end of the day, science is kind of this thing that sits over on the side, but it really matters if it speaks to you. So I'm going to encourage you to think about what this is saying and how to reflect on it and do that to you. And to do that, I'm going to make myself vulnerable and share stories about my own resilience and my journey to help you to feel comfortable in undertaking that journey yourself. So let's get underway. These are the key concepts that I'm going to be speaking about today. What is resilience? It is a really strong foundational construct of positive psychology. Psychology normally thinks about fixing people with problems. This is about how to make us better and healthier and able to do the things that we really love and want to do with our lives. And resilience, just like an ecosystem, it's constantly changing. It sits inside an environment that's moving. And so there's no ideal steady state as to what is resilient. It is a combination of a lot of factors. But it's a framework for really understanding how we try to reduce our vulnerabilities and increase our adaptability to cope as well as we can within those environments. Now, life satisfaction. This seminar is called Happiness and Creating Your Own Happiness. Life satisfaction is a really key construct to understand within that, because happiness is a combination of both pleasure and purpose. And life satisfaction ideally encapsulates that for us, because it's a very complicated set of trade-offs that we make at our own individual level, make an assessment as to how satisfied we are with our life, given the totality of where we are at that point in time. And there's a really important understanding that sits within this concept of life satisfaction called set point theory. And what this says is that people's individual well-being is pretty stable over time. And that while distinct events might impact on us, positively or negatively, it's only temporary, and we generally come back to that set point. And it's also important to understand that the characteristics that determine our life satisfaction, approximately only 30–40% are related to us as individuals and our ability to cope. The majority of what determines our life satisfaction, 60–70%, is our environment around us. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So this is just a visual to show you that you will have some deviations, which will bring you down to a different state that you'll sit at for a while. You'll come back towards that state. Something else might happen and you might dip down again. So there are different points at which you will deviate from your set point and then come back to it. So this is me, 25 years old, day that I was admitted as a lawyer to the Supreme Court of New South Wales, standing proudly beside my mum, my extreme model for resilience, single mum of 4 kids. And here we are enjoying, and I think I've never looked more satisfied in my life, having got through that, working for one of the top law firms in Australia, thinking that the world is before me and everything is about to go the way that I really want it to go. So what happened? I met a guy, we moved to France. And what do these 3 things have in common? Lottery winners, paraplegics, and my first overseas move to Paris. Well, what we know is that people who suffer extreme highs like a lottery win or extreme lows like a paraplegic, even in those instances, within 2 years, they're back to the same level of happiness and life satisfaction as they had prior to those events happening. And the same with my move overseas to Paris. Here I was, lawyer, graduated, with my boyfriend in the city of love. What more could go wrong? It was a real shock to me to find the first 3 months sitting on a couch. I couldn't move. I was so overwhelmed by the nature of the changes that had brought me to be in that place. I couldn't speak the language. I had no sense of who my identity was. I didn't have an income stream. I walked out the door and I didn't know anyone, and I had completely had my environment around me removed. Within a year, I had learned French. I had knocked on every door within France to try and find a job. I ended up going to England to the recruiters over there and spoke with what they call the magic circle of law firm recruiters. First one said, absolutely no way. We'll ever get you a job over there. It's a trifecta. You don't have the language, you don't have a residency right, and you don't have a recognized qualification. Second one said, we can try, we'll work it out, maybe it'll be a tough road. The third one said, oh, we've got an opening, here you go. And off I went. And it's this surreal experience that after such hard yards, you're standing there, and I'm flying all over the world, doing global closings in New York and Bangkok. And it's like this period of sitting on a couch never ever happened. And that all happened within a 2-year space. So it's just to emphasize that major environmental changes do have an impact, and you will get through them and things will happen. But, and this is really a point where we interact with you guys, we've been nearly 2 years down the road of COVID, and we've had a major set of environmental changes working around us at a global level on this front. What do you think this means in relation to our COVID experience? And I'd like you just to reflect a few things in the chat box, and Catherine will just read a few of those reflections out or questions, and we'll just take a moment to just reflect on that concept of set point and life satisfaction.
You can just click on the chat box, everyone, if you just want to share a couple of your insights or experiences. We've got disrupted plans. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Unexpected change. Some of the flat moments are out of our control. Learning to set new work routines, unable to see family and friends, loss of opportunities, my chaotic life slowed down, having to adapt to change quickly, ability to change and travel last minute. That's a positive one. It can only get better. Not seeing family and friends overseas, and less business travel. So a lot of impacts there, Britt, around change, adapting to sudden change, not being able to plan, not being able to see friends and families, coping with other people's stress and emotional reactions, building skills in flexibility and adaptability, missing out on the big moments like weddings.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That's really, really insightful. And, you know, it shows the depth of impact. This is truly a global event. And whereas I've been through changes like going to France, where I've got a major change going on in my life, everyone around me has been relatively stable. In this instance, everyone's got a big change happening around them at the same time. It's been like a masterclass in adaptation. And that first point that you said about, you know, disrupted plans, you know, life is kind of what happens when you're making other plans. And this is definitely a circumstance where it is. And there's been a lot of disruption to what people think and how they need to do it. And so going forward into this space, just to keep in mind that there is likely to be a 2-year frame around that, to come back to some sense of normality around what it is. But we are very, very adaptable in this space. And that your sense of life satisfaction, even in new environments and new circumstances, will be something that you're likely to be able to feel comfortable with, if not now, at some point in the future. We always say with grief that time is the healer, and I think this is why. We have this inherent capability. So I'm going to quickly step through some dimensions of resilience at an organizational level, an individual, and a career level. So at an organizational level, there's two kind of major approaches that people tend to look at this. And I'm not going to go into depth. I want to talk more about the other elements. But one is a planned approach. And I call this the, if anyone knows this Japanese technique, Marie Kondo spark joy method of clearing and tidying and doing other things. This is called the spark joy method at work. It's a planned approach to developing organizational resilience. It comes from environments like nursing and health, which are very demanding and have a big call on resilience to be able to do what they do. And it's got 4 things there that you kind of step through and create a plan within your work organization to be able to build that resilience. The second, and this comes from a benchmarking study in New Zealand of 64 organizations and an organization called Resilience New Zealand, I think, which really looked at it and said the majority of organizations, if they are in tough spaces like health, they tend to have a planned approach. But most other organizations take adaptation skills and build those adaptation skills inside their organization. Creativity, innovation, leadership, responsive decision making, useful in all sorts of circumstances, but absolutely essential as a resilience capability. So 2 key ways that we've seen that happens. So let's talk about it at an individual level. For this one, I'm going to look at a study that was done. It uses a data set called HILDA. It's a household income and labour dynamics study of Australia. It is representative and it has a set of annual waves that are pulling data together associated with it. And what does it tell us about our resilience and life satisfaction? It basically says that life satisfaction measured at a score of 10 finds that the majority of people are in what we call a thriving state. They have a life satisfaction score between 6.5 and 10. So most people are pretty resilient and pretty happy. 8% of the population is struggling, and 1% have between 0 and 4.4 on that scale, and they are classified as suffering. What is more important is to understand that as they measure that data set over time, the resilience is actually how far you stray from that set point. So people that are happier and more satisfied with life have a much narrower band of variation that they move within. Whereas those that are in the struggling space have a bigger one, and those that are in the suffering space have a very large one in terms of how they go. So resilience is how far you're straying from that set point, and the smaller your deviation from your set point, then the more resilient you are. You're essentially coming away from that, and your systems are kicking in to pull you back towards that set point quicker, more effectively. You're adapting better. Things are happening associated with it. So it's a really interesting and strong way to understand what that evidence sort of says. So can you change an individual set point is sort of the next question. Most of what we do as parents and in education and kids is trying to strive to give kids a really good set point to start off with their life. But what the resilience training says to us is that you can train people to move their set point, but keep in mind 70% of life satisfaction is due to your environment, so there may be better and more productive investments in the environment that people are sitting within, such as your workplace happiness and organization. And secondly, most people don't need it, they're thriving. So if you are going to offer individual resilience programs and work in this space, try to target segments of the population that need it. Now, I know working with international meat business women and conversations that I've had over here, that there are large migrant workforces. And I know that Australian meat industries also have these as well. This is an ideal population to look at, support systems and things that might be needing for people compared to the rest of your population, things like this. And here are some examples of great resilience programs that are around. I have done this resilience project GEM stuff. GEM stands for G is gratitude, E is empathy, and M is mindfulness. That's run by the Resilience Project, which is a great one. There's also other ones that I've kind of put up on here. They mostly focus around mindfulness, cognitive skills, compassion, gratitude, emotional regulation, relaxation, goal setting. In this space, what you're really doing is coming back to the present, coming back with your breath, coming back into a space of gratitude, which is returning you back to your set point. Essentially, it's taking you out of whatever space your mind is in and focusing on the here and now and the things that are actually good in it. So that's really important. So career resilience. This is a bit of research, which basically says that this is an instance, contrary to life satisfaction, I'll see this in a number of places, where more individual self-direction actually pays off. It is a space where individual direction and control and self-efficacy have a greater impact than in your broader life satisfaction. People who are more self-directed demonstrate personality, accountability, and agency are more resilient in their careers. And this appears to be a really important attribute for modern careers. And I'm going to show you this set of research, which talks about these characteristics of modern careers, which they call the protein career, which has elements of self-directed career management and values-driven career orientation, and the boundarylessness aspect of modern careers, both psychological mobility and also physical mobility, and different kinds of career profiles that people go through associated with it. In this research, the people that are the protein career architect, who have high across all of these elements, are the most satisfied with their careers. It's also the case, in having been a boundaryless person who's moved around a lot, that they are not as satisfied as those who stay put in the one role. There is something about that stability of the environment that is important, and finding your way within it to be able to deliver the kinds of things that are there. But nonetheless, it gives you an idea of and handle to be able to understand how careers are changing. The most important thing to understand for career resilience is career shocks. So significant events throw us in unexpected directions. Some events are completely unanticipated, like injury or illness. Some are planned, and these are the ones for me: relocation, marriage, pregnancy, things that are going to happen within your lives. And as women, we know that these things are going to be happening for a large majority of us at these points in time. So I'm going to come back to me and illustrate this thing. These are my little shockers, with me sitting in Malaysia with young children. There I am on the Great Wall of China. I've got one on the back and one in the belly. And over here in Malaysia, traveling around, having a great time, seeing the world, enjoying with my kids. I also took a complete career break for this time between 2009 and 2012. And what's important to understand about set point theory, this is the great exception. Long-term unemployment is one thing that people never recover from. It is the exception to the set point. And it's a factor associated with loss of social status, your self-esteem, your lack of professional networks. And I can certainly say that coming back in to the workforce after this time, it was a real shock to the system to have to reestablish all of those things for 3 years out of the workforce. I was, moving on from that into an acting role at a more senior level. I was responsible for 40 people, risk policy analysis for the entire department, some fantastic projects. And, that time away seemed to have been the shot in the arm that I kind of needed. So I went from a kind of like a career complete absence to a very strong career engagement with 3 small children, 2 careers, no maids or nannies others I had in Malaysia to help me to support myself and work things out. It was a really big adjustment. And I've got to say, I didn't cope. I really didn't cope. I got diagnosed with something equivalent to what they said was postnatal depression. I said, how can I have postnatal depression, 4 years after my kids had been born? This doesn't make any sense. And they basically said that I needed to take drugs in this instance. And it's the first time that I did it. And I'm so glad, because what it did is it brought my resilience back within my emotional bandwidth, within a space that was able to understand. It moved me back within a more resilient set of bandwidth. I couldn't go above or below the things that were there. And through that process, I went forward and went for the job interview to take the position permanently, and was told that that 3-year gap in my CV basically meant that I needed more seasoning. So basically I had to recalibrate, step forward, step sideways, and find a new way forward. And this is when I entered the meat industry. And I started working, running livestock policy, running R&D for the 7 R&D organizations, quota export management, all sorts of things in this space. And it was a really amazing kind of thing to kind of pull me forward. So what does the science tell us about behaviors that help with our career resilience? This is some great research done at the University of New South Wales, and they've developed 4 key things. Develop an effective relationship with your boss, develop an effective career network, undertake suitable training and development opportunities, and seek job challenges. Now, in this space, 2 of them relate to relationships, and that's really what I want to focus on today, because this is the key to the things that you kind of need to do. And so what I want to do is to get everyone to do a little exercise with me. You have a piece of paper or something handy. I want you to take a minute to think about an important project or goal that you'd like to achieve in your work or career in the next 12 months. Just write it down. And then for that goal or career, I'd like you to put a list beside it. And beside that is the people that you're going to need to help you to make that happen. And there's 3 fields I've identified here: people that can provide you with technical information, expertise, or specialized skills, people that can give you financial, material, personnel, or other resources to do it, or even political support. And beside those people, I want you to put a yes or a no as to whether you have a relationship already with that person. I'll give you just a minute to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go forward to the next slide, and I'm going to invite you. The first question here, what does this tell you about the adequacy of your social network to enable you to accomplish your project or goal? In the chat, can I just encourage you to put a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or some indicator of its adequacy of your social.
Or thumbs up so far. One thumbs down, up. Yeah, the majority has got thumbs up. Yep.
I think we may have just lost Britt for a moment, Catherine.
I'm thinking too. I just saw that she's just dropped out, so we'll give her a second to do a rejoin. Which gives everyone an extra minute to ponder that little thought exercise. Apologies all, hopefully it's a quick connection back for Britt.
Hey, I'm back. My internet seemed to have dropped out. I put onto my personal hotspot and I'm back.
Beautiful, all good. Everybody had an opportunity to have a little extra time to think about that exercise.
Perfectly timed.
It was. Overall, the majority is thumbs up, and there's probably secondary to that is it can be improved, it can be worked on. There's definitely some areas to improve and opportunities.
Fantastic. So it's really an understanding for you to understand that the resources that you need to move on from this to try and build that network. The science tells us that trust and the basis of those relationships is formed through, believe it or not, kindness. And that's the strongest and most important element of how we understand and build trust. And so for the people that you do need to build the relationships with, it's about targeting those individuals and seeing what help you can offer them. Offer the kindness to them, because this offering of kindness to them invokes an inherent thing within us to offer reciprocity, and usually far in excess of whatever help and assistance you have offered. People don't like feeling the burden of being on the other side of largesse. They want to reciprocate, and they want to do things to help you. So think about position-related resources. What can you do to help people with their career advancement? What can you do to increase their visibility and public praise? This is huge for building trust. Challenge and learning opportunities for those individuals that you can help them to do what they need to do. What tasks can you do? What can you give them in terms of information and advice, assistance, cooperation, or material resources to achieve the things that they're trying to achieve? And another one is, person-related acceptance, ownership and involvement, and gratitude. All of these things help to build your professional work, and that's exactly what women in meat business do. It's creating those networks and professional opportunities and ability to help each other. There's that great meme going around, I don't know if you've seen it, of the high school corridor with all the balloons in it, and everyone had their name on it, and they were told to go in and find their own balloon, and they couldn't find their own within 5 minutes. Then they said to everyone, find one and give it to someone else. And everyone had their balloon within 5 minutes. There's a huge power in we to be able to deliver the things that we need within our lives. And it starts with an act of kindness on our part. So relating this back to my own story and where we're going to finish today before we move on to questions. So I moved into the meat industry, and it was a fantastic time working with many of you to try and build capacity to be able to do a whole range of things. And as I got ready to do for another promotion or a posting in my own right, my husband was offered ambassador to the UAE. So off we went, and it was his dream. I couldn't deny him to the capacity to do it. And so I had to find my own way and direction to move within it. And two key things that happened within that was going to work at the London, do studies at the London School of Economics in behavioral science. I'd worked out through discussions in public speaking and other things that I really was motivated by knowing why things happen. And the London School of Economics motto is to know the causes of things. It was the perfect place for me. And over here is where I'm doing some work for the International Centre of Bioscience and Agriculture, running some workshops here in Mozambique. I got to tell you, these balloons and encouraging people to have a sense of fun and play in making their future together. They took those balloons, they delicately untied the knots, they pulled them down and they took them home to their kids because they'd never seen them before. It was an amazing experience on many levels, but that was one of the most amazing ones to me. So in there, I did all 4 of these strategies. I had a really amazing relationship with my boss when I went overseas. She had been overseas on a posting with her husband, and she said, don't stop work, keep going. I said, really? I've got kids, I've got this, I don't know if I can do it. She goes, 1 day a week, just keep going, keep going. And through her, I worked with the organic industry. That's where I met Daylene Ray. And we had an amazing time until my boss retired, and it was pre-COVID and no one really had these international remote work relationships. And so I had to find an alternate path forward. I then worked through LinkedIn to build a really effective career network. And there's a lot of steps involved in doing that. I really encourage people to do the training and do the work to be able to establish that. All of my work, all of my connections come through that space at this point in time. I also took the suitable training. I did the master's at the London School of Economics, and I sought really challenging and different jobs. And working in Africa for the International Centre of Bioscience and Agriculture then allowed me to move on to Agri, where I am now. And I've just been accepted onto panels to work for the Food and Agricultural Organisation as well. So it wasn't what I was planning, but it's where I've ended up, and I couldn't be happier in terms of the process that was there. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Catherine, to lead us through any questions that people have. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Britt, for that amazing insights. I've already taken a few notes myself. I'd like to open up to the forum. I'll hand back to, if you want to stop sharing, we can open up the forum to see everybody through Ash. Lovely. And if anybody's got any questions, feel free to either pop it in the chat, or as we're all now on, you're welcome to also unmute and just direct your question in the forum as well as a collective. Thank you. There's one question here, Britt. How do we find the happy balance between being present and planning or thinking about the future?
Well, the science actually tells us that we are very present focused in our decision making. At the end of the day, this is the reason why climate change and all of these things are so difficult, and saving for the future and many other things. We put a much greater value on the here and now and the things that we have to do in the moment than we do on things that we need to plan and prepare for and do in the future. So while it feels like we're very future focused in what we're doing and planning to do it, the actual weight of the decisions is in the present. So you actually have a bias towards your present, you have a bias towards your status quo. So in those things, it's hard to believe, but it is true that your bias is present. And often most of our behavioral sciences are trying to help people to get ready for climate change, get ready for long-term savings, get ready for the things that they need to do in the future. Diet, denying the things that you have in the moment to be able to suffer, to be able to benefit in the longer term is a real challenge for us as humans. So to do those things, and the key to that is actually something called patience. And it's not something that's easy to develop. It's not willpower. It's about understanding environment and how that impacts your decision making. And it's about cultivating a sense of gratitude with what we have in the present, and capacity to be able to think about it in the future. Does that answer your question, Ashley, or is there some different direction you were looking at there?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for Britt? Liz, you went on video and then off. Did you change your mind? Is Lizzie?
I did, sorry. I accidentally had to close out, but I do have a question, so that was a really good lead up. Thank you, Britt. I just wondered if you had any tips on how to best transition from long career breaks back to finding a job again. Should we continue working at some point during that break, or yeah?
Look, I think it is a matter of keeping your hand in at some level. That's really the big lesson that I've learned, and particularly what I found is your professional networks. So staying in touch with things like Meet Business Women is really important, because at the end of the day, you've got to have a referee. You've got to have someone to recommend you within the system. And if they don't know who you are from Joe Blow on the street, it doesn't matter that you've had this incredible experience beforehand. This is the real key, is to just keep your hand in and keep active at some level associated with it. There's also a lot of research around programs and ways to do it. And this is maybe something that Meet Business Women or others could look at. The big end of town use something called a returnship. Similar to an internship, it's a capacity to target and support people that are returning after career breaks into the workforce, and giving them opportunities and specifically targeting and creating a pathway forward for them in the process. That's a great thing to think about looking for if you're on the other side, or creating if you're in the opportunity to offer that assistance to people around you. And then the other thing is skills. So if you're not working in a job, but developing skills is another important thing to be able to do and to keep active in that space. And the work that I do with diplomatic spouses all around the world, for example, in Australia, when we did the research on us, before the last posting, 94% of us were working. After we went to post, only 9% continued unchanged in their career. And it's a big gap to get over, to get people back into the workforce and capable and doing things, both going out to post and coming back into Australia, because it's actually the case that people who work overseas are not as accepted when they come back in. It's seen as a break, even though they've been working and doing incredible things all around the world. So you're not alone, is that really the point? There are a lot of spaces and ways that people are taking breaks, and this is more the norm. And as we move into the space where, you know, the gender revolution had women going into the workforce 50 years ago, we're reaching a space now where I think men are coming back into the home more. And that's really the gender revolution that I think we're waiting for at this point in time. And so we will start to normalize and see the concept of breaks happening across the board, and not just for women who are, you know, producing babies or taking breaks for other reasons. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Britt. Thanks, Lizzie. Another question, any tips on not letting stress rub off on the kids?
Please tell me yours. You know, my cousin gave me the best tip on that ever. You know, he said he just had to walk. He's a builder, and he'd come off a construction site and go back into the house with his 4 kids at the end of the day. He had to stop himself at the door and give himself a severe talking to. He said, my issues are not theirs. You know, I'm here for them. And he had to recalibrate his brain, really, to sort of walk in that door and to be ready and available, not only for the kids, but also his wife and everything else that's been going on in the day. And that's the best advice that I've had. But I'm keen to know what anyone else has got to say, because I'm as guilty of this as anyone else. And I don't leave the house anymore, so it's even more critical for me to find ways to do that.
Thank you. Another one here. If you've got any thoughts or tips on the challenge of finding staff when you're based on a rural property, not physical workers, but that data and admin support.
Oh, Pointer. It's a remote-based work that is connecting people who are available to do that. I'll see if I can find a link, and I will post it in the chat. Perfect in a rural context in Australia. She was agribusiness woman for New South Wales. She's hosting the awards this year. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you.
If I can find that.
Someone else has said, I know Jo from Pointer, she is great. Yes. So we'll sort out that link and circulate it. That was from Carolyn. Delene has posted a question as well, and I just want to do a huge shout out to Delene. She was a former Australian MBW committee member. She's been here from the beginning, and she has submitted some wonderful suggestions for speakers, including Britt, who's joined us today. She's just asked, do you find the advanced network useful? It's for Aussies working offshore who have returned home.
Yes, I mean, we do. I've done lots of work with Daleen working in the UAE with the business councils over there. And I think any business connection that you can make that puts you in place and able to do it. And what's beautiful about Advance is that it is global. And it does have this focus on capability and bringing people back and bringing that talent much more effectively back into Australia, and the ability to exercise our soft diplomacy skills much more effectively around the world. It does great research. I'm actually working with them now to try and build better surveys and to understand the impact on, because it's a dual career usually that's going overseas now, and how to facilitate both careers to advance in these circumstances. So I think it's a great organization. I can't recommend it more highly.
Lovely, thank you. And the pointer URL has been dropped into the chat. Time for just one more question before we wrap up this session. How about a volunteering role when not working as a way to keep connected?
Absolutely, and that's from Lorraine. And can I put a shout out for Lorraine? Lorraine works establishing remote working arrangements for refugees around the world. She works with MIT. She's based out of Cambridge University, working through the Middle East and all sorts of places. Yes, absolutely, Daleen. Lorraine, it is critical to find capacity to do that. If you have the ability, now volunteering takes energy. If you're already in a vulnerable space, sometimes it's hard to find that energy to take care of other people and to do other things. So if it's the case that you already have that energy and you're able to support and give that to other people, that's amazing. Sometimes that gives people energy, but not for everyone. But if you are able to find ways to do that and to be able to continue to have, good things on your CV that are using your skills, I would recommend it. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, on behalf of all the attendees that have joined us today, I'd like to say a huge thank you, Britt, for joining us for this masterclass. I know that you need to now wrap it up and get the kids on an 8 a.m. bus, I think, for school. And thank you all for your interactions, your questions coming forward. Just to let you know that masterclasses are recorded and are available on the Meet Business Women website for members. You can reach out directly to me or to Ash or to meetbusinesswomen.org for any further questions. But thank you again so much, Britt, for taking this time today, and thank you to everybody that has joined.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.